Welcome to Sunspots, where we explore the many ways that the Holy Spirit is working in the people, places, ministries, and missions on the surface of the sun. That is, the Synod of the Sun. I'm Valerie Young, your Synod leader. My prayer is that you find inspiration, community, and connection in the sun. We wanted to bring this conversation to you as a bonus episode because it is so timely and so needed. The last 18 months or so have been hard on everyone, especially on our pastors. The Reverend Carol Waters has learned from this time and was willing to share those lessons as a female part-time pastor of a small rural church in Elk City, Oklahoma. In addition, Carol has begun practice as a spiritual director with Woven Integrated Health and also serves as the Director of Chaplain Services for the Graduate Theological Foundation, both in Oklahoma City. I think you'll hear something that resonates in our conversation. I hope you'll keep listening. So, Carol, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good, really excited. Really excited. There are new things happening in my life and in the life of the church that I'm serving.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this time of kind of this interim time when we don't know exactly what church is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the Spirit is moving and moving us. And so that it feels good. It feels good to be part of that process, even though as a control freak, I'm learning very slowly and reluctantly that I'm not in control and have never been in control, and that's all an illusion.
Isn't that funny how it can take us so long to figure that out? And then I often forget that I don't have that kind of control.
Yeah. Well, it is, but I think that some of that comes with the territory of being a church leader. The expectation, I think, is that, well, you're the pastor. You went to school for this. You went to seminary. You've got a degree in this. You ought to know what we should be doing. And why don't you? And so now that I'm 55, past mid-career, I'm learning more and more that letting go and asking questions instead of providing answers is a healthier model of ministry for me, at least, and I think probably for others. But it's such a learning curve when I think the church has been built on that expectation that and especially in the last since the 70s at least, with that corporate model that the pastor is the CEO, CFO, know-it-all, boss, supervisor, who should know everything. And
not only know everything, but do everything.
Well, and I think for women, in ministry especially, there's a double whammy in that there's the expectation that the pastor will do the majority of the stuff. That if you have an idea, that is then your idea to put into movement. But I think as women in the church, there is the other expectation that, well, you're a woman and women do things behind the scenes, and women are the ones out front, and we kind of are the glue that holds everything together, and we don't ask for help. And I just feel like it's, at least for me, starting to buck up against that I think a cultural expectation. I think cultural in the church, but also cultural as a citizen of the United States, you know, in a Western country. I think bucking up against that expectation of you will be a doer and you will like it and you will not complain about it. I know that old model for me has been unhealthy, and led to depression, led to anxiety, led to serious burnout, where I was a reader in lieu of being a pastor. That really seemed to be something much more my speed at the time of my kind of dark night of the soul. I think for women, we come into this world, I think, with so much baggage. I think there's so much stuff placed on us as women, culturally, that number one, I think it's hard to even recognize that enculturated part of us is even there. It's so much a part of us that we don't recognize it at times. And so I know for me, it still comes out in, which is so funny that I'm doing a podcast with you, because it comes out in me in kind of self-censorship, in verbal, making sure that what I'm going to say isn't going to offend, isn't going to ruffle feathers, that what I say is sweet and kind and gentle and nice, because that's what women are supposed to do. And at least in the generation I grew up in.
Okay. Well, you and I are about the same age. But because I haven't been through, because I'm not a teaching elder, I haven't been to seminary, I haven't been through the, the congregational ministry and some of those things. I often forget about the aspect of being a female in ministry. Even though I had a conversation with a couple of male pastors the other day who pointed out to me that I'm a female in ministry. Well, I feel like what I do is ministry, but I forget that I'm also a female among many men.
Yes.
There's also many females, right? Just backing up a little bit from what you talk about in terms of expectation in the church. I feel like a lot of that has to do with, especially like you said, back in the 70s, adopting this more corporate model. That as a ruling elder, I know and acknowledge that we have acquiesced our authority and our duty in the church to pastors. And because you are a female pastor, maybe that you will own that. you will take that on, and how unfair that is.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I mean, for a long time, I really did want to blame the church for the way that I was feeling, for that there are too many expectations placed on me as a female person in ministry, that I can't get help, that I'm not asking for help, that the environment of the church is such that I don't feel free to say whatever I want to say and to be prophetic in the pulpit. And for a long time, I blamed the church for that, until I realized, that is on me. I mean, I never knew what healthy boundaries were in ministry. And so this desire to please the people around me was just so much a part of me that I couldn't help it. And in times of high anxiety in the church, that came out for me, that if I just mollify the church, if I just become their helper and become their supporter and become the one who does the things, then they will like me, and I won't ruffle feathers, and there won't be any conflict in the church. And for a long time, I think that really was my goal, to keep from challenging those norms and those expectations. Even though by not challenging those norms and expectations, I was dying spiritually and emotionally and mentally. So, I'm moving out of that. And so I do feel freer now to say, what do you think about this? What are your expectations? And not provide those answers, and not say, well, I can do that. Not to do the work of the church by myself. But it's hard. It's hard to be in that. Feels like a fight sometimes, because I think some church folks still have that expectation that if I have an idea and present it, especially to session, that means then I will do that. And so I'm needing to learn to say, I'm a part-time pastor. My role is to equip you all, not to do the work.
Right.
And that looks a lot different from the way I have ministered for the majority of my career. So it all feels very new and scary.
And that's awesome. First of all, that must feel, as someone, I can relate totally to what you're saying, but I haven't lived that revelation yet. Right.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to say that to myself. I'm still there. But as I said, ruling elders have begun to act, just not begun. We just have a history of acquiescing the authority of the church. It's Presbyterianism 101, right? And yet we give that away. We don't do the work. And I know as a ruling elder in the local congregation, I'm totally guilty of that, but I see it from a different side now. I know that I've had conversations lately with pastors of, small-ish congregations who have said, especially what felt like for a while we were coming out of a pandemic.
Right.
It should be said that we're recording this on July 29th, and the CDC has just recently changed their recommendations, and no one quite knows what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. But those pastors have said it feels like coming out of that maybe their session is waking up to there is really more that we could and should be doing.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I've been talking in sermons more and more that the church that we grew up with is not a thing anymore. It's not here anymore. It's gone. And if there were any remnants left, the pandemic did away with all of it. So, I've heard people say, when can we go back to normal? Never. What was normal before can't come back, won't come back. We are in a brand new, we are in uncharted territory. And I don't believe there's a pastor alive or person in church leadership alive who knows what the next few years are going to look like for the church. We have guesses. But I think that for me, the not knowing, I think there's huge freedom in that not knowing. I mean, suddenly I'm saying to session, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. There's the Book of Order. Yes. We are Presbyterians. Yes. What we offer will be guided by our history and who we are as a denomination. And what we can do will be guided by the Book of Order. But in terms of ministry and mission to the communities in which we find ourselves,
Mhm.
I mean, I just feel like the pandemic has kind of blown those doors wide open
Mhm.
because so many of us have had to learn Zoom and Facebook Live. And, I mean, I joke that I never in a gazillion years thought that I would be a TV pastor. I mean, that was not, never dreamed that. I'm such a traditionalist. And so here we are, First Presbyterian Church of Elk City, Oklahoma. We now are live streaming our services in addition to having in-person worship. And we have more people viewing throughout the week, not just on Sundays, throughout the week, our service than we have ever had probably in the history of our congregation.
And I just want to say that I now have a deeper appreciation for what that must feel like. I mean, I know it's not exact, but I think it was, a week ago Sunday, I was at First Presbyterian Church of Lafayette, and I brought greetings during Sunday worship, and it was being Facebook Live.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous when I get up in front of a group anyway.
Yeah.
But the nerves were extreme to know that it is like TV, right? And that it just for me in the few minutes that I had to interact, that was, I can't imagine what it would be like to be on that end of the lens every Sunday and to lead a worship and it's stressful enough.
It is. I mean, it's stressful in a different way, knowing that there are people watching you and hearing you and seeing every bobble of a word in the gospel reading that I do, or the ums and the ahs that I tend to do when I speak off the cuff. But there's also an excitement knowing that our reach has expanded tremendously. I mean, that's the amazing thing that and I as you know now, after I deleted all the files from a shared Dropbox file, that I'm a Luddite when it comes to technology. I don't particularly like technology. I don't know how to do it. I'm not interested in new technology, and yet it is helping us reach people that we never would have reached otherwise. And by reached, I don't necessarily mean like to fill our pews, because that's not going to happen. I mean, the people who are watching us live stream, we probably will never meet in Elk City. Maybe we will.
May not even be givers to the church.
And may not be givers to the church. No.
You are reaching people with the gospel.
Yes. And that's pretty amazing. And I think because I'm such a Luddite technologically, maybe in other ways too, I don't know. But I know that it's out of my control. That I'm, as pastor, I'm not doing this. This is happening through the magic and the miracle of computers and internet and Tony Chauncey, our tech guru, who knows how to do all this stuff. He's making it happen. The people watching it are making it happen. I mean, it feels like a much more participatory process than it ever did before, prior to the pandemic, when it was me in the pulpit and the few gathered on a Sunday.
Right.
So I just feel like this time is ripe with possibility. And it's incredibly scary because nothing is sure or certain. But I believe that God is doing what God always does, which is bring new life.
Yeah. This might be a little iffy, but I'm gonna make this leap. I'm a fan of Simon Sinek, and I know that he, I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but he's he's sort of a motivational person who speaks to the world of business, right? The corporate world, and that's where finding your why and things like. He speaks also about sort of game theory and business, and everywhere I hear him say business, I just replace the word church. It's really the same thing. There are two mindsets. There's an infinite mindset and there's a finite mindset, and the world is infinite. And so often we think of things in a finite mindset. And for me, the way I see it is that individual congregations have been living in a finite mindset for so long, so afraid of closing, so afraid of, but what we forget is that we serve an infinite God, and that the church, Big C church, goes on, whether our little congregation does or not. And I feel like, there are always lessons to be learned in situations, especially like the pandemic, those things that you've talked about, all those possibilities. I feel like we're being taught to remember that infinite mindset, to remember all of those possibilities as we serve that infinite God. And that is that's huge.
It is, and
it is exciting.
And it's exciting when I was kind of at the depth of my depression and my burnout. And I started seeing a therapist who was continues to be incredibly helpful for me. And I would recommend any person doing church leadership to have a good therapist. She helped me to see that I had really locked myself in this box in terms of who I was as a pastor and as a clergy woman. I had done that. Nobody else had done that. And that's based on family of origin stuff and cultural stuff and all kinds of stuff. When I started to realize that, I have options. I can, yes, continue to pastor and be a small church pastor, but because I'm part-time, I can do other things that enliven me and in turn make me enthusiastic again to be a pastor. So I've decided, and I took a spiritual direction training course at Ghost Ranch now, 5 years ago. So I'm in the process of having a spiritual direction practice where I will have directees and companion them as they on their spiritual journey. And I've taken on a very part-time job as a Director of Chaplain Services for the Graduate Theological Foundation, which is newly headquartered in Oklahoma City. And being able to do those things, and I'm doing a little bit of stuff for the denomination, for the Board of Pensions, putting my feelers out and just trying things and experimenting and seeing there are things out there that really do excite me and feed that part of me that I think I had forgotten could be fed. I'd lost hope that, okay, it's like the Dunkin' Donuts guy, time to make the donuts. That was kind of me and my ministry. Okay, one more sermon to prepare, one more bulletin to,
right.
Same old. And then I realized, well, I've got options. I can get out of this locked box that I've put myself into. I have the key to it. So those new opportunities, which I think have come about because of the pandemic time, if it was not the time away physically from the church that I was forced to do because of lockdown, I don't think I would have had time to think about what are my options? What are those things that feed me as a pastor?
Yeah.
I don't think I could have had, I don't think I would be where I am now had it not been for that time away from the church.
there are so many other stories out there of pastors who are, I think, discovering the same things right now.
Yeah.
And that's frightening for the church as we know it.
As we know it. Yeah.
As we have known it.
Yes.
Because there are so many pastors and even mid-council leaders leaving their ministries right now.
Right.
And for some, I mean, I'm not sure they would say, well, I don't know. I haven't, that's not fair. I haven't really talked to them, but I know some have said literally just laying it on the line that they're burned out.
Yeah.
That the pandemic has done this to them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is that I think maybe the cultural misunderstanding of the way the church is. We believe that the church is supposed to work.
Yes.
And some of it may be, what you say about many pastors, male or female, being those people pleasers.
Yes.
I hope that members of congregations will remember that this is good for their pastor. They're going to feel that sense of loss.
Yeah.
We're all going to feel that sense of loss as we continue to move towards what God has in mind for us.
Yeah.
As a church.
Mm-hmm.
But there is so much possibility.
Oh, there's so much. And the older I get, the more I think that being human, that being a faithful person, belief in God is less about, and maybe not at all about either or and black and white, but about both and. I mean, I think that part of the expectation in the church is, well, if we're not going to do it this way, like we've been doing it for the past 25 years, then we can't do X. If we used to have a congregation of 50 people and we did these fabulous vacation Bible school programs over the top with blow ups and we're now pretty much a congregation of 10. No, we can't do vacation Bible school like we used to, but that's not to say that we can't ever do vacation Bible school again. There may be a brand new way to do vacation Bible school or to reach out to children in our communities that we haven't even acknowledged or recognized or thought of yet, but it's out there. And so, I think this time of uncertainty has at least really made clear to me the importance of holding on to possibility, onto the both and nature of God and I think of being human. I think the either or black and white world view is deadly.
Oh.
I think the both and worldview promises life and possibility. So I think in order for the church to continue to move forward into God's promises, I think we need to adopt more of that both and mindset.
I hope you've been enjoying this episode of Sunspots, a region of the Presbyterian Church USA. We are Presbyterians in Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, with dynamic and hopeful ministry happening in the name of Jesus Christ. If you have a good news story or an exceptional ministry to be highlighted, send that good news to sunspot@synodsun.org. Now, back to the show.
I really do.
So, girl, I have so much respect for you as a woman in ministry, small church pastor, chaplain, friend. What words do you have for other pastors of small congregations who might be struggling, especially right now, with the latest news of the Delta variant and all these other possible, in the new CDC's directions, and pastors who haven't moved in, been able to move into the gray, away from the black and white.
Yeah.
What words?
So I guess, the first word that comes to mind is self-care. Pastors have to take care of themselves in every way, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You gotta take care of yourself if you're gonna work in the church. Find support. Know that you don't have to do this all on your own. The future of church with a big C is not all on your shoulders, nor is church with a small c. Should not be all on your shoulders.
Right.
I think talking honestly with the session about the struggles that I have been feeling was incredibly helpful. And they were so generous and so understanding and so loving when I just confessed who I had been in ministry. So I think honesty about who you are, who you really are, and showing vulnerability is key in this time.
That is so hard for some, especially.
Oh, it is.
Us control freaks, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Let's talk some about your spiritual direction.
Yes.
Let's talk some about the Graduate Theological Foundation. I want to hear all of it.
Oh, cool. Well, so I really feel like these are two projects I'm involved in that God has led me to. I feel as strongly called to these two things as I do feel called to ministry in a parish setting. So spiritual direction, a lot of people may not be familiar with it. It's more prevalent, I would say, in Catholic circles than in Protestant circles, but it's growing. Spiritual direction is an ancient part of Christian spirituality. Began way back with the desert fathers and mothers. A spiritual direction simply builds a relationship with a directee so that they can walk alongside that directee as the directee explores their relationship with God. The director asking questions rather than providing answers. The director simply listening and trying to be really present to the directee. Spiritual direction provides this place of safety where you can say anything. You can say anything to your spiritual director. It's somewhat like counseling, but spiritual directors do not diagnose. We don't prescribe. There may be, might be suggestions as to what you might try at home, but it's mostly about building a mutual relationship and trusting that God is present, and it's actually the Spirit doing the directing. I mean, as a spiritual director, I'm kind of like I don't want to say a conduit because that sounds kind of like a weird channeling thing. So I don't know that I'm that, but I'm there to facilitate, I think, what the Spirit is already doing. And in spiritual direction, we trust that, God is already at work in all of us. Sometimes it's just a matter of uncovering stuff in that person's life to see evidence of that work going on.
Right.
So to me, that's it. It's a really exciting, intimate way of being with people in a way that I can't be as a pastor. Or haven't, in spiritual direction in my training they said, you can't, it's difficult to be both. It's difficult to be a spiritual director to your congregants. Hard to have those dual roles with people. And so while I have done some spiritual direction type stuff with my congregation, and especially trying to listen more and speak less and ask more questions, I've done some spiritual direction in that way. But to sit down with somebody on a monthly basis for an hour,
oh yeah,
I probably won't do that. So I'll have a separate spiritual direction practice with it's actually an integrative health company with psychotherapists and a yoga instructor in Oklahoma City, where I'll have some office space, and I'll be seeing directees out of that place, along with maybe some private, people who just hear about me and say, would you do this with me? So that really, yeah, again, I mean, it feeds me in a way that I can't describe. It allows me to do kind of the work of a midwife. So I'm doing women's work in a really new and different way from what I've done in the past. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's spiritual direction. And I hope, I think spiritual direction is needed. I think it's needed for our pastors, for church leadership. I think it's needed for our lay folks. And I sure wish that our denomination would jump on board and really recognize the gift that spiritual directors bring as much as pastoral counselors do.
Yeah. I know that I know some presbyteries, especially as COVID, really ramped up, were offering some spiritual direction to their pastors. And that's really been a blessing to some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So great. Tell us about your chaplaincy gig.
Well, that really was, I think, God made it happen. So when I was working with my therapist about my option, she said, oh, what is it going to hurt to just put some feelers out? Just see what's out there. There's, no harm, no foul. So I knew that Paul Kurbis, who pastored Westminster Presbyterian Church in Oklahoma City, was going to be leaving and was the new president of the Graduate Theological Foundation, and that it was going to be newly headquartered in Oklahoma City. And his wife, Jennifer Kurbis, who's also a clergywoman, Presbyterian clergywoman, was the provost. And I thought, I like the work that they do. It's a nonprofit, interfaith, multicultural, international educational organization, which just thrills me no end. And so I said, if even I just answer phones for them, I would like to be involved in that in some way. So they moved GTF, Graduate Theological Foundation, to Oklahoma City in September. And I reached out to them and I said, if I can, even do administrative stuff for you all, I'd love the chance to, work some hours with you. And Paul graciously said, we don't even know what we're doing yet. This is all brand new to us. Don't know what our needs are. But thanks for contacting us. And I thought, that's the end of that. I put my feeler out and didn't happen. Well, in January, he contacted me again and said, we're looking for a chaplain to minister to faculty, staff, alum, and students. And we think you would be really good at this. And I met with them. And after I met with them, I said, yes, yes, please. This is something I would love to do. So, I'm now the Director of Chaplain Services for the Graduate Theological Foundation. We're in a cool old building in Bricktown, Oklahoma City. GTF has been around since Vatican II. And I don't know a whole bunch about Vatican II, only that there were lots of changes that occurred in the church after that occurred. And so one of the big changes was to get Protestant pastors and Catholic leadership to begin talking to each other, to start to bridge that divide between the churches. And so that was the beginning of GTF, and GTF started to offer educational opportunities for clergy to do that, to be in dialogue with one another. And so in 60 years, and it was headquartered in Indiana, in 60 years, it's now grown to this international religious educational institution that reaches people in, Africa, Asia, Europe, all over the United States, offers classes for all denominations, all religions, and all walks of life. The ministry for GTF is defined really broadly. So we don't just reach out to clergy people, but ministry is defined as service to the improvement and nurture of society and the world community. That is ministry defined by GTF. And so we offer courses for, yes, pastors, but also mediators, social workers, psychotherapists, people involved in canon law, teachers. I mean, just people from all walks of life can find something of use in the programs that we offer. We offer professional programs. We offer certificate programs. We offer degree programs, both master's level, but also doctoral level courses.
Right.
And so it just, when I first started, and even still, I mean, it feels like I'm part of something really big, just touching so many lives in so many places. And we partner with other institutions around the world. We've got a partnership with the Oxford University Continuing Education Center. We've got a relationship with a university in Rome. We've got affiliations with Evangelical Seminary in Matanzas, Cuba, which was founded by Presbyterians and Methodists and Episcopalians. And so we're doing new things, especially in Cuba, because the church is growing so fast in Latin American countries. Educational opportunities have not been keeping pace with the growth of the church. And so that seminary is now, in conjunction with GTF, is offering a DMin program for pastors in Cuba and in Latin American countries.
This is online. Obviously.
It's online, it's self-paced. There might be a little residential piece to it, but primarily GTF courses allow people to stay where they are without having to make a move for a full-time degree program. And so that program in Cuba is something we're really trying to foster and nurture, because we feel like that's where the growth in the church is in those countries.
Right.
And so we want to try to equip the leaders there to do the best they can in learning how do they pastor these big churches that are forming. What are the educational needs of those pastors? What are the practical needs of those pastors? And so there's a DMin program that we're working on with that seminary to help equip those pastors. But yeah,
Carol, what does this chaplaincy look like for you?
For me right now, it's very, very part-time, but I reach out to I reach out to students and faculty and alum and staff. I provide pastoral support and care for them. So especially during the pandemic, we've had lots of deaths in the GTF community, family members, students. And so I've been reaching out to those students who may not be able to finish their degree program because they're dealing with family stuff. So
Right.
reaching out to them, reaching out to folks because it is such an uncertain time for everybody. So maybe somebody didn't lose anybody in the pandemic, but the pandemic has shifted the world in such a way that they're feeling additional stress.
Right.
So I think GTF just offers, well, let me say this. I think GTF has really been on the cutting edge of the use of technology in education. I mean, even before the pandemic, GTF has been utilizing Zoom and all kinds of technological interfaces that traditional educational models have not had to do. And now we're all having to do this. And probably, I think the educational system worldwide is changed forever too. I mean, I don't foresee a time when we will not meet virtually. Maybe not all the time, but some of the time. And so, so GTF has kind of been on that cutting edge, offering classes online for people who don't need to travel, can't travel, and don't really need to travel now that we have this technology that allows us to connect across the ocean.
And we all know how to use it, right?
And we know how to use it. And just about everybody has a laptop or a phone or whatever. So, so GTF offers that flexibility to its students to be able to meet their educational needs and enhance their knowledge in a way that really works with their day-to-day situation,
Yeah.
So that's exciting. And so part of my job also now is to kind of reach out and make connections, reaching out into the synod, maybe even denominationally, presbytery-wide, statewide, citywide, to try to make new connections now that GTF is in Oklahoma City. Because, and I'm glad to do it. I mean, I'm just thrilled with what GTF has to offer. I just think there's such a wide range of programs and classes that could be taken to enrich people's knowledge base. It boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. And it feels to me like this is another area where God is working.
Infinite possibilities, right?
Infinite possibilities. Yeah. Our faculty come from all over the world. Our students do too. And so, this globalization is something that I'm really feeling in my work with the GTF as I send an email to somebody in the Philippines or in Washington State or whatever. It reminds me that we are all connected and that the church is bigger and broader than my little congregation in Elk City, Oklahoma, or even my denomination.
Right. It's so interesting to hear you talk about that and see the thread of as you refer to it, the globalization, right?
Yeah.
You talk about how Facebook Live worship has opened up to literally the globe, right? And this work that you're doing with spiritual direction and how that has opened you, right? And become, and it's accessible to everyone.
Absolutely.
And then the work that you're doing with GTF, that is so awesome.
It is. And it's, one thing that I realized a long time ago is I've always wanted to live a life of congruence where what I say I believe lives out in my life. You've got a book behind you. I think it says embody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to embody what I believe in. And these new opportunities are allowing me to do that in ways I never thought possible. So, I mean, I want to make a plug for GTF and invite people to go to the website where they'll find a plethora of information. Just go to gtfeducation.org. And
it's a super easy site to navigate.
It's a brand new website. Yeah.
I found some courses in there that I really like too. So
yes, we offer a whole bunch. And we're now poised because of the pandemic and what it has brought. You know, it sounds weird to say the pandemic brought positive things to us, but I think it did in terms of time to think and reflect. GTF is thinking new thoughts and going into new areas. And so when people go to our website, they'll see some of those new relationships we're trying to build with other institutions and with the church at large. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so excited for you, Carol. Thank you so much for sitting with me today. This has been fun.
Can I've got a blessing that I thought, you know, if we talked about kind of this weird time that we're in, there's this blessing I wanted to read. It's by John O'Donohue in his book, To Bless the Space Between Us. And I thought, you know, this is fitting, especially for my life right now, but I think for everybody's life. So this is a blessing called for the interim time. When near the end of day, life has drained out of light, and it is too soon for the mind of night to have darkened things. No place looks like itself. Loss of outline makes everything look strangely in between, unsure of what has been or what might come. In this wan light, even trees seem groundless. In a while, it will be night, but nothing here seems to believe the relief of dark. You are in this time of the interim, where everything seems withheld. The path you took to get here has washed out. The way forward is still concealed from you. The old is not old enough to have died away. The new is still too young to be born. You cannot lay claim to anything. In this place of dusk, your eyes are blurred and there is no mirror. Everyone else has lost sight of your heart and you can see nowhere to put your trust. You know you have to make your own way through. As far as you can, hold your confidence. Do not allow your confusion to squander this call, which is loosening your roots in false ground, that you might come free from all you have outgrown. What is being transfigured here is your mind, and it is difficult and slow to become new. The more faithfully you can endure here, the more refined your heart will become for your arrival in the new dawn. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thanks, Valerie, for this opportunity. Take care.
In the Synod of the Son, we believe when we work together across boundaries, we make visible the good news and find wholeness as the body of Christ. In our common calling, we impact lives together. So let's remember to connect with, equip, and empower one another in the name of Jesus Christ, today and every day.